Previously on The Love of Rugby.
Out of the 4 games, who's England going to win and what games are they going to lose?
Australia, don't waste my time. Do you know what I mean?
Ah, Lenny, why do you say these things, bro?
That hasn't aged well, has it? That one. Do you know what? I honestly thought, after watching Australia in the Rugby Championship, seeing the results that they had, and given England had a game going into this game, and Australia had a bit of a break since they played Bledisloe Cup, I thought that it would be. And after 15 minutes, I was like, yeah, I'm not wrong. There we go. It's 15-3. England are absolutely dominating. And my gosh, I mean, we'll go through it. But, wow. So I've had some heat anyway. I've had a lot of messages, as you can imagine, not only online, but also a lot of being pinged through on the phone from ex-teammates in Australia, from colleagues, Polly messaged me straight away with let me find it. Don't waste my time, quote, with about 20 laughing faces. And he's like, brilliant. I couldn't stop laughing as soon as it happened. Can't wait for the next episode on the pod. Cheers, mate. I've had Matty Tamua message me as well.
Bury you a little bit, is it?
I know, give me some stick. And then it's I've had Tamua message me. I've had Ed Hollis, who used to be head physio of Australia. I'm waiting for everyone else, to be fair. Czech. I'm waiting for Czech to message me. I saw Will Skelton after the game, Samu Karevi. They're absolute gents, to be fair. And actually, I know them, having played against them a fair few times. They're very nice people, but they were giving me some heat as well. But it was all in good jest. So, I mean, fair play to Australia. I honestly didn't see it coming. And I think, in and around Twickenham, Allianz, yesterday, Tone, you were there as well. I think everyone was pretty confident that England would get the job done. And I think after 15 minutes, I thought there's no way that they wouldn't. We've had some emails as well from some listeners. Here's one from Jake. What's the next podcast going to be called? Egg on face, foot in mouth. Ben obviously got the Aussie revved up. Thanks again and keep up the good work, Jake. Thanks, Jake, for your kind message. Message from Sam P via our Google form. Ben, do you feel silly? No, I don't. I was prepared to say what I felt, which was I felt that they were going to be there for the taking. I felt even more so given the fact they didn't have Will Skelton and Samu Karevi playing. Guys like Nick White wasn't either. And I thought that England would get the job done pretty comfortably. So, no, that's what I believed in. That's what I thought. I thought if you're going on the form and going off where both teams are at, but it looks to me like Australia are slowly improving. Well, not slowly, are improving, under Joe Schmidt. And England, I've got more questions than the answers, to be honest with you, at the moment.
I mean, we live and die by the sword, don't we, Len? Yeah, we do, mate. You've got to live and die by your decisions. And I think, just in response to Jake, I'm not 100% sure that the Australia squad would have had the love of rugby played in their team meeting with Len saying, "Don't waste my time," as their fire up pre-game. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Len. We did a lot of talk pre-game, and I was of the same opinion that England were gonna win the game. So I think that, especially after that fast start, I was thinking we could sit in gear 3 here and win this game. But fair play to Australia. I thought that they responded unbelievably well to going down how they did early doors. And, to be fair, they didn't give up either. It would have been easy to, in that 80th minute, to, stay with the forwards, give away a penalty, and tried hard, lost the game. But the courage to go wide at the end and finish off the game, I think it showed some stones from Australia, so fair play.
I suppose their resilience, because 15-3 down, 20 minutes, England, everything's going England's way. The first try is an absolute belter from England. Hands goes to Smith, goes to Jamie George, tips to Genge, who spins, gives it to Curry, who then passed to Earl, who gives it to Chandler Cunningham himself, who scores in the corner, right? And momentum's all with England, speed of ball's all with England. The next one's a quick tap, Chandler Cunningham himself again, and England on front foot. England are dominating, and it's almost like Australia had a free swing, in my opinion, anyway, coming to Twickenham. it was a shot for them to just go out there and given how many youngsters they had out there as well, that almost at 15-3, the shackles came off even more. And then they played a brilliant game, like moved it, caused us so many problems. And the game became quite open and loose, which does not suit England at all. And it suits Australia. And they were just thriving in it. And then I think this horrible feeling of oh my gosh, you know, they're in the lead. Oh my gosh, you know, going at half time, we're losing. How are we losing? And then this, like, the height of expectation and pressure builds on this England team. And then I'm looking at the England team and I'm looking around and I'm watching it. I'm thinking, who's going to grab the ball by the horns here? Like, who's out there that's generally going to go, right, boys, hasn't gone our way, but this is how we're now going to go and win it. This is what needs to happen. Like, we never brought Australia into that power game. We never brought them into the vice of trying to squeeze them. Like, we played with ambition and we moved the ball nicely. And that got us a lovely lead. And always, like, we scored some nice tries. But, like, the game had to be... We were to and fro in with this looseness. And it doesn't suit us. So at some point, you have to pull Australia back into a set-piece game. Like, scrum, maul, like, territory battle... squeeze them that way, and we just weren't prepared to do that. But it's like, I don't think we had the capabilities of recognising what needed to be done, and that for me is concerning.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the go forward and I guess spark we had in attack was mostly driven by Marcus, and I thought Marcus thrived in some of that unstructured attack, unstructured phases of play. And I completely agree. I think that at some point there needed to be a little bit of calm. Let's get back to, you know, what we know has traditionally worked very well for England, which is set piece to set piece, control the game, slow it down if needs be, but just to get, you know, that kind of stranglehold back on the game. And I think that probably was required definitely around 50, 60 minutes. But there was a period in that first half where you could see everyone was knackered and it was loose. It was drop ball to drop ball, end to end almost. And I think after that phase of play, there needed to be a little suggestion that, look, this game is exactly how Australia want it to go right now. We need to kind of rein it in a little bit. Not to say we're not going to attack, but we need to, you know, play how we want to play, to dictate how we want the game to go, at least for a period, until we can then loosen up a little bit, go to the edge, do this, that and the other, instead of just trying to go there a bit too early, if that makes sense. That's how I felt watching it.
Let's just bring it back to Australia. So 3 cheers for Australia. Joseph Suaalii, what a player. Australia have got like some serious young talent, because they did have a mixture out there of sort of youngsters and some guys that we haven't really known too much about. They could maybe win the Lions series 3-0, or Andy Farrell may have watched that game and thought, don't play loose against Australia, because that plays in their hands given the talent they do have. But let's talk about Joseph Suaalii, mate, because the hype around him was huge, and rightly so, because he delivered. And his ability, that first try Australia scored with Tom Wright in the corner, that only comes from him. I mean, England's defence, we'll get onto that, because it is suicide at times, to be honest with you. But his ability to just in and out, such good footwork, in and out, gets the next defender who has to then turn in and bite in on him, which means he's then created, like, sucked in 2 defenders rather than 1 with the in and out. Over little NBA pass, and Tom Wright's got plenty of jet shoes to get in the corner. But there was other times, mate, claiming the air, little chip kick over the top, and he jumps, and he reminds me of that sort of Izzy Folau, where you jump and you reach his peak height and then stays there for like 2 seconds before he starts to come down. You're like, it's incredible. But he'd almost jumped and he like tapped it towards his player running around. And there was another time they tried to run out of an exit, out of a kick return, a kickoff, sorry, and they shifted, and he tried to sort of like just shift it on the outside. He had a great feel. You could just tell he's a proper player.
100%. You can see a talented and really good, just smart rugby player out there. You know, like you said, for that try to execute that 2-on-1, get on the outside of Slightholme, who is rapid, and then tip just right at the perfect moment to Tom Wright on the edge as Furbanks had to turn in. You can tell he's been around the block in terms of understanding rugby. And, we know there's aerial skills. I think England obviously were targeted in that area off kickoffs by kicking to him who has experience in claiming the ball in the air with his NRL skills, and obviously with his ridiculous height and athleticism. But for me, mate, I think an area that has probably been overlooked was actually how good his centre partner was, and probably how much that freed him up. Because I thought Ikitau was, for me, he was the man of the match. I know Suoli had a lot of hype going in, and it's his first game of rugby union since school, which is insane to think he's just done that, rolled out and done that. But I thought Ikitau was their standout player. I thought he was electric every time he got the ball, beating defenders, getting them go forward. He looked like he had a full skill set. Didn't matter whether it was out wide, didn't matter if it was in tight, he was always getting go forward. And then that no-look flick, in the dying minutes of the game, to have the wherewithal to just be able to do that, not even looking at Jorgensen on the edge, and just flick it to him once Marcus has turned in. I thought that was very, very special. So I think that he probably offloaded a little bit of the pressure and the workload that Suoli had to go through, not taking anything away from him, because like I said, he was outstanding as well. But I thought Ikitau was their best player yesterday.
Yeah, he was. I totally agree with you, Tone. He complimented him very, very well, and he was lively. And we'll touch on the end of the game a little bit later on the show. But yeah, they've got a lovely little partnership, and I think Karevi is also available to slot in at some point, which is a kind of scary thought now. The ability they're going to have in their midfield. So let's delve into why England lost the game at 15-3 up. When you score 37 points at home, you should be winning a Test match.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. 37 points is more than enough to get it done. And you just don't want to, obviously, name of the game, concede more than you score. But to go, if you just look at it purely, on the outset, England score 37 points at home, like you said, that's more than enough to get it done. And you never expect an England team at Twickenham to concede that many points. So I think undoubtedly we can look at the defence, and that's the priority, is to look at the defence and see, well, how have we conceded 42 points? But like we just said about 5-10 minutes ago, in terms of the nature of the game, that suited Australia. After we went 15-3 up, we went to a bit of not looseness, I think that's the wrong word, but the game just became a bit loose, and I don't think England necessarily played into that, but we didn't play away from it, if that makes sense. We didn't, like I said, get that stranglehold that we're used to seeing England implement, that pressure type rugby. And instead, Australia thrived in that kind of constant turnovers that were showcasing themselves. So I think that those were probably the two fundamental areas. I would say it was the style of rugby that the game kind of forced itself in that first 30-40 minutes, and England's inability to kind of get back to what we're used to seeing from them, alongside a defence that was definitely not where we're used to seeing it, in terms of over the summer and over the Six Nations. And I think that that's probably the glaring areas where the game was lost. I'm not sure if you'd agree, Len. You've probably seen something a little bit differently to me there.
No, I do agree, Anne. What do I see? I see us racing to a 15-3 lead. I see us probably believe this is going well, this is a bit easy, this is a bit, leave the door open for Australia because we get seduced by scoreboard, we get seduced into this game. I dare say, though, Ant, I do have concerns about our attack still, because if you remove Marcus Smith from yesterday, then I'm not sure where our creativity and tries come from England. He's that pivotal. He's done 2 great attacking kicks that have led to tries, purely on the back of his just ability to see space and make something happen out of nothing. The quick line out, that's come from him because he's calling for it when he's back at fullback. Last week obviously got the intercept. I'm struggling to see where England's points come from if he's not playing. Like he's fast becoming the most important integral player that we have in an England shirt, because we're not creating enough opportunities. We're not expansive enough in terms of trying to build pressure, put teams under pressure, because we sat on the lead even at the end. Right at the end of the game, towards the end, when the move broke down off that line out and Ollie Lawrence actually threw a hole, he spills it, they pick it up, they score, Callaway scores. For 5 minutes prior to that, we'd gone back to what we did against New Zealand, which was like go to the box kick, play no rugby, don't shift them. But therefore, you're sitting on a lead. You can't do that against Southern Hemisphere teams. In fact, you can't do that against anyone. There's some bits of our games that I'm just very, very concerned about. The Blitz is another one. We fell off 35 missed tackles. Like, there's times in the game where you can't blitz on everything. Just be a little bit more passive, get them to a sideline, like get your numbers sorted, and away you go again. So, there's just bits to our game at the moment that I'm really sort of finding difficult to figure out, because I feel like parts of it is like we are literally shooting ourselves in the foot. Now, I know that Steve Borthwick said afterwards about how turnovers conceded, which was 17 in total, when looking at the Sage Insights. And from that, he said, I want to stick with the Blitz, but when you turn the ball over, everyone's at 6s and 7s, and therefore you can't implement the Blitz as well as effectively as you'd like. Well, 4 of Australia's tries come from structure. So it's not from turnovers. It's actually from points where you should know where you're at, you should be able to stop it, you should be organised. And it's a concern, mate. It's a concern, because now you've lost by 40 at home. You're doing a defensive system inherited by Felix Jones, who, by all accounts, is one of the best coaches in world rugby. Like, one of the best, right? Which is he's actually a attack coach by trade, did defence, but it's that bloody good of a coach that was able to do it brilliantly. And we made huge growth. Joe Alab's now inherited this defensive system. It's not a defensive system he's run, he's inherited it. He's obviously been told that that's the defence they want to carry on doing, but it's not something that he particularly knows to the level of detail that Felix Jones did. So now we're blitzing, we're now lost by 40, and now I feel sorry for the players at the weekend, because now you're probably blitzing and you're a little bit unsure, because you're probably not fully confident in it, because when you get it wrong, like, it goes proper wrong in the blitz. It's like it is all or nothing, and all the all or nothing plays at the weekend didn't come off.
Yeah, I think my concern, Lenny, is around the blitz and the areas that we were blitzing from potentially. I think, once Australia got go forward in and around the ruck, and they constantly were getting on the front foot, it becomes very hard, because as a blitz defence, you're constantly coming up and then backtracking. And if you've got speed of ball like Australia did in and around the ruck, it becomes very hard to be set, to have the right numbers, to be connected with your guys inside and outside. And that's when holes appear, or you feel vulnerable on the edge. So I think that if that area was shored up a little bit, potentially, getting a few more dominant tackles, being on the front foot in defence, I think it allows the blitz to actually work pretty successfully. But my issue, and I was sat with or talking with Jonathan Joseph, who's, in my opinion, the best defensive 13 England have ever had, and he was suggesting that there needs to be some form of bailout, in terms of, England need something when their numbers down to just be able to connect and not get out of the blitz defence, but just have like an insurance blanket. And I think that in a few of those situations, I think that would have saved a try. Look at the first one, for example. If Furbank doesn't come up and in a sort of blitz-ish style defence, I think that Slightholme gets to Suaalii and Furbank gets to Tom Wright in the corner. So I think that there's definitely scenarios where the blitz looks susceptible and it looks weak. I think that some of that gets solved by having better defence in and around the ruck, getting better connectedness and being set. And I would say that I don't think that they should go away from it just yet. It is aggressive. It does look like it's do or die, but I think it would be more successful. And it has shown it was more successful when England are more dominant in their tackles up front. They're set in and around the ruck. So I think those are the areas I'm looking at.
England got sort of outcoached because Joe Schmidt tactically was outstanding yesterday. And, you know, for all the heat I'm getting from the Aussies and it's play on, I don't mind it. It's all in good jest. I did say how smart Joe Schmidt is, and I stand by that, because let's just expand on the ruck stuff. He clearly went for Australia to go in and around the ruck and tighten up the blitz. So for the listeners, for people who don't understand it, in theory, the blitz defence is about being pretty tight. It's about slingshotting forward on the further out away from the ruck you are, getting really high in the eye line, so it forces teams that they can't get around you because they look and they think, oh my God, if I throw this, I'm going to get intercepted. So they have to go back inside. And it basically keeps teams within the 15s and then opens up the opportunity for England back rowers, England players to jackal the ball and make it a real mess. And then teams find it then hard to put width on the ball and everything like that. That, in theory, kind of the blitz. And you get high and then you trap teams sort of 10 metres behind the line and you get the ball back pretty quick because you force errors, you force jackal opportunities, you force mistakes and everything like that. Where Joe Schmidt and Australia were so smart yesterday is they went in and around the ruck. So when the ruck's set, they started going at England's 1 defender and 2 defender. And what they got with that was momentum, speed of ball, and they were dominating the collisions. Like, dominating the collisions, falling forward, falling past, ball presented, quick ruck. And because we're losing 1 and 2 defenders, 2 guys are making that tackle, the blitz is tight anyway. Like, it's a defence that's pretty tight. But you lose 2 defenders, everyone comes in again. You lose another 2 next ruck, speed of ball, everyone comes in again. Before you know it, as a defensive team, Australia were getting rid of sort of 5 defenders in around the ruck of England's because they're either getting back on their feet because they've just been involved with tackle, or they can't get set quick enough. And then they were moving the ball, which was then getting around us. Or equally, the Tate McDermott one, which he makes the break just before half time that leads to the try, is they're expanded. They've then gone to the width, and then he's come back against the grain. And because Chandler Cunningham South is having a slingshot forward because that's the blitz, is like he's trying to fly and create pressure straight away. He then leaves a dog leg, which basically means he's fixated on that first attacker that's likely to get the ball. He's got no appreciation of Tate McDermott running out, and it leaves George Martin sort of like stationary at that first defender slot, and it creates like a little bit of a hole. And Tate McDermott, who's rapid, like no 9 needs more of an invite than that. And there's just around the ruck, I thought Australia exploited us so incredibly well. They're very, very smart about it. And it kind of showed a blueprint of, you go, like South Africa this weekend, mate, they're going to be coming in around the ruck. And what's even more concerning for me is they're coming around the ruck with bigger bodies, with more powerful bodies than Australia have, with electric wingers that can like manipulate space and move. And then on the back of that, we're still blitzing. And I think that's the thing, Tone, I'm probably getting at now, is we are blitzing regardless of what's happening. Like, we're flying no matter what. And JJ's right, Jonathan Joseph's right. Like, if you're defending that system, you need at times where you're just like, we're in this shit here, boys. We can't fly and go shut it down because we're that short of numbers that like we'd be better off just holding our line, keeping our integrity of our line strong and just kind of dealing with it. And if we give up 10 metres, we give up 10 metres. And the end of the game is an absolute perfect example of that. And we will touch on that a little bit later, but we might as well go in it now, just briefly, is Australia aren't really going anywhere. And I commend them for having the balls to move the ball, because I look at England and I think England had the opportunity last week. They didn't move the ball too much. If England are in that situation yesterday, they probably pick and go, they go around the ruck and they try and squeeze a penalty. They try and get a not rolling away, an offside, like a cheap 3 right in front of the sticks. Australia go, no, f*** that, we're here to win it. And they run a little arrowhead. He pulls it out the back to the 10, who tips it, who then McWright, who was outstanding all day, does a little pirouette, leaves it to Icky Tau, gets on the overs, gets out slight home, out the back door, like, try to win it. And you think, do you know what, Oz? Fair play. Like, you've had the balls to not try and win it with a penalty, eke out a pen. You've had the balls to go, no, we're going to win it, ball in hand. We're going to shift it to space. I dare say England wouldn't have that mindset. So I've kind of covered a few things there, but around the ruck was a masterclass from Joe Schmidt. It tightened up the D, and we've got to find ability to recognise we can't blitz on everything. And at the end of the game is a perfect example of that. We are still blitzing, and there's no need. There's just no need to do that. But it's very clear that we're blitzed regardless. It's very clear that, because that's what it looks like.
I think the end of the game, to be honest with you, might not be the perfect example, only because I feel like I'm not sure who it was who did that pirouette, but that's another key aspect of the blitz defence is you've got to stop the ball. If you're in the position to get up in the eye line, you've got to stop the ball. So whoever's done that pirouette, like I said, that ball should have been stopped there and then. You know, if that doesn't get outside of him, it's a completely different ball game. You've stopped them behind the gain line. As soon as that ball can keep getting shifted and shifted and shifted, it just opens up the edge, like you said. But a key aspect of the blitz defence is once you're up high, if the ball was there, you have to stop it. It can't get outside of you. So the end of the game, for me, is a perfect example of the blitz D. It could have worked, or it should have worked, but didn't execute it quite well enough. And I think in that instance, the ball gets stopped when, I think it's Fraser McRae, tips it on his outside, and it's a completely different ball game. So those offloads and all those little bits of just being a little bit off, 1 or 2 steps, I think is what makes or breaks a blitz D, and I think that it cost England.
Mental finish to the game, by the way. Like, England are up, that move breaks down off the maul, they score, we kick off, we win the kick-off, then we end up leading to, Freeman wins it, we end up leading and we end up scoring off a grubber kick that then Tom Wright carries it over, scrum, we score. Then there's a minute left, so like they scored, we scored, you're thinking, like, yes, all we've got to do is receive the kick-off and control it, a bit like Australia did only 2 minutes prior to that. Australia then kicks short. Joseph Suaalii gets in the air, disrupts it, England knock it on, scrum, and then obviously leads to a try as well. But doesn't that just show you how important kickoffs are? Like they say it's like the third set piece, and it literally is. And the amount of times that we practice those scenarios as teams, as players, that individually, whether you do it at the end of training, catching them scenarios, but as a team also, Tone, we practice those scenarios like twice, 3 times a week throughout your whole career. Minute left, what you're gonna do? Right, 30 seconds left, you've got to do a kickoff, or 30 seconds left, you've got to receive a kickoff. But I mean, Joseph Suaalii's ability to hover and get in the air is incredible, but this is something as players we replicate all the time, and it's just incredible that both teams failed to kind of deal with that kickoff.
Yeah, definitely. I think the last one, again, I think was almost unbelievable skill execution from Maro, and no one practices those type of skills more than Maro in terms of kickoff receipt, whether he's getting lifted, whether he's, at the front jumping and catching it on the run. I'm not sure there's any second row or back row that's better than Maro in that area, and he was so close to taking it in a scenario where, to be honest with you, I think it's pretty much a 50-50. Maro getting up in the air and Suaalii getting up in the air. And the key thing is that Suaalii's not actually trying to catch it; he's trying to tap it back, and that's much easier to do than to catch it clean. So for Maro to get up how he did and literally so nearly take it clean against one of the best back 3 competitors I've seen, I think was fair play. But fair play doesn't quite cut it, does it? And fair play doesn't get you the win over the line, and those are key areas of the game that end up losing you test matches if you don't take that cleanly. So you can't pick out Maro and say that he should have 100% caught that, because it's an insanely difficult skill when someone's charging onto you with the athleticism that Suaalii has and the clear run and sight he had to be able to get up in the air. I know Maro will probably look at that and think I should have taken that, but it's a very, very hard skill, and I think that those are 50-50s at the best of times, so I wouldn't put any onus on him, but it's definitely an area that teams are going to look to exploit a lot more, I think, across the board. Not saying just against England, I think just across the board. If you've got someone who can get up like Joseph Suaalii can, it's almost not a guaranteed turnover, but it gives you a great chance to have a platform into the opposition's half after just conceding points, which is what you want, isn't it? You want to get back into the game and get a foothold down in their area. So yeah, it's definitely going to become more and more important and add to the element of it becoming the third set piece. But in terms of the end of the game, I'm not sure you can pick that out as an area and say we should have dealt with that better, because I thought that Maro actually did a great job, was just pretty unlucky.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly not saying that that cost us by any ways. I'm just saying it's fascinating that kickoffs have become such a weapon, because, as I say, Australia take the lead and then we win the kickoff back with Tommy Freeman straight away. We take the lead and then Australia win the kick back straight away. Just sort of reinforcing the listeners, like, we do practice those scenarios all the time, but it just shows, like, when you create a one-on-one, like the athleticism of these players is incredible. And the ability to win that back, I think people underestimate the skill level to either claim that ball for you defensively or claim it back for your attack. So, look, talking about, we've obviously mentioned Suaalii a lot, but there's some other absolute standout performances from Australia. So Tom Wright was very lively at fullback. Fraser McWright, for me, he was everywhere. In his white and red scrum hat, he was everywhere, the 7. I thought he had an outstanding game. But Angus Bell, like, I'm just going to read out some stats here from the Sage Insights. He carried 14 times. He beat 9 defenders. He threw 5 passes. He threw 1 offload. He did 14 tackles and he turned over a ball. This is a loose head prop we're talking about. And then for context, the last time any Wallaby beat more defenders in a test match was when Corabetti beat 11 versus Georgia in 2019. So just let that sink in. That's a loose head prop. He was bloody outstanding, as was so many of them. Icky Tau as well, we've spoken about. But to a man, Australia turned up and they proper went for it. But he was pretty catalyst in terms of getting the momentum and speed of ball. And when we speak about the carries, a lot of them were around the ruck, getting that momentum, stopping the blitz that we talked about, causing no end of issues. And then let's talk about some positives for England. So last week we said Ben Earl was doing so much work. I think he did 17 carries last week, and the other numbers were Manny on 9, Marcus on 8, and I think Mara was the next closest forward on 5. So when we look at this week, they shared the load a lot more. So England carries, you had Benny Earl at 12, you had Ellis Genge at 10. How good to see him carrying the ball, mate. Love that. Marcus Smith with 10 again, like always a threat. But I think he distributed maybe 28 times, sort of 30 times compared to 8 last week. Ollie Lawrence, 10 carries. Like, that's great to see him back in the game. So maybe the actual switch of going from 12 to 13 worked out well in that aspect. And then Chandler Cunningham himself with 10 carries as well. So, mate, some positives. We got more carries out of the guys. England got a bit more front football and everything like that. But of course, unfortunately, it didn't transpire into what would have been a great England win.
Yeah, I think 100% marked improvement from the previous week in terms of sharing the workload. I thought Chandler Cunningham South carried really tough, and he carried consistently throughout his period on the pitch. Genji, we all know what he can do ball in hand. I think that some of Angus Bell's carries looked a lot similar to how Genji carries, where he's just looking for someone to run into and to run over. Doesn't matter where he gets it, he's almost arcing back around the ruck looking for someone to run over. But yeah, no, I thought Genji carried very well. And Marcus, again, like, carrying from fullback is no easy task. And I thought Marcus made it look pretty easy. He was never getting tackled by the first guy. He was always putting us on the front foot again. So I thought him moving to fullback at 60 minutes, he still looked like he was the most dangerous player from England's perspective on the pitch.
So many good things come from Marcus. And another guy that's last couple of weeks has probably been quiet by his own high standards is George Furbank. I think we've got to find ways of getting him in the game more. Like, George's ability to be an extra distributor, a playmaker, make things happen. Like, we've got to find ways of getting him more touches, because I think he's such a threat ball in hand, and the way that he manipulates space and can be, at the moment, a lot of the creativity, well, in fact, all the creativity is coming through Marcus, but George can also play that role, George Furbank. So we've got to find ways, mate, of getting the ball in his hands a little bit more in space, so he can then be that extra playmaker, because he hasn't had as many touches as any of us would like over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you saw a different desire, I thought, from the New Zealand game to get George involved. I thought he stepped up at first receiver 2 or 3 times, pushed Marcus out, and that's where you kind of want him to offload some of the workload that Marcus has to do. I think as well, what you see him doing so well at Saints is picking lines. He's really good at picking those late lines. Even on set piece sometimes, you saw, I think it was in the opening round of the Premiership, came swinging around the ruck, hit an unbelievable short line against Bath, and distributed it to someone on the edge who finished it off. So I think a lot of that comes down to a lack of continuity in England's attack. It doesn't look like we get loads of phases tied together. And I think that's where Furbank comes into his element, really, is 4, 5, 6 phases. Either getting in at first receiver, like you said, and taking some of the workload off Marcus, putting Marcus, in and around those edges where he might have a bit more space, or vice versa, him picking those lines in and around those edges. But it's hard when you only have 4 or 5 phases to do it. You want to see those expand a bit further so that you can get a few tired bodies, and that's where Furbs can pick those lines and pick out a loose forward or something like that. So I think there's loads more to come from him. I think that he's a brilliant distributor. He picks great lines. I think he's got high standards for himself, and he'll just want to get involved a lot more. And I think that can be said for a fair few of England's backs. They just want to influence the game a little bit more than they currently are.
Well, Tone 2-0. I feel for the boys. It's a tough week in camp now because you got the world champions coming next week. So it doesn't get any easier with what's coming. And we've been there, mate, and it's very, very difficult, isn't it? Because you are desperate to get on the right side of the result. You're desperate to perform and turn things around. And I guess you got to channel those disappointments into what is going to be a monumental challenge, but an exciting one because you're playing against the world's best. And, you're at home playing against the world champions. And I guess for this weekend, I dare say it, that, the expectation isn't on England. The last couple of weeks it has been. For this week, it's a chance for England to kind of go under the radar a little bit and have almost a free swing at South Africa. But my gosh, it's going to be some challenge, to be fair.
Yeah, I think the team that South Africa have put out against Scotland this week is probably a little bit different to what we'd expected, and probably different to what it will look like against England next week. But again, the strength in depth that they've got is just ridiculous. Like, that by no means looks like a weak South Africa team. It just looks different to what we're used to. But it's definitely a challenge for the England boys, 100%. But I think that, I said to you straight after the loss to Australia that I would not be surprised if England go and win that game against South Africa, because it would be so, I don't know, I just feel like it would be so England to do something like that, given the emotional response that I reckon we'll get from both losing these 2 opening games in such tight fashion, but also there's, the amount of heartbreak that South Africa have delivered to English rugby over the last 2 World Cups. I think that a lot of the boys that have been involved in there just go up a level or 2 against South Africa. And I would expect that to happen again this weekend. But it is absolutely not a task that's going to be a cakewalk. I see it being very, very tight. But England will be up for it. There'll be absolutely no shadow of a doubt. I don't think they'll be licking their wounds, feeling sorry for themselves, because you can't. You got to get straight back on the horse and ride out against a tough Springboks team on Saturday. And if you're below your best, you're going to get really found out, and then you'll be 0-3. Do you know what I mean? So I think that no one wants that, and everyone will be fired up to put out England's best possible performance against, unfortunately, the number 1 team in the world.
Well, I'm no good at predictions, as we've found out, but I am a little bit concerned about next week when the Springboks roll into town. I hope if there's families watching that it's PG, because I do worry that it could turn into an 18 quite quickly. But yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to make any predictions this week. I'm going to stay well clear of it. But congratulations to Australia. You played an absolute blinder. And some humble pie for me for a few days. So well done. Up the Wallabies. Good luck to you for the remainder of the tour. England boys, dust yourself down. You got a hell of a game coming. And Ant, thanks so much for joining. As always, mate.
Thank you, sir.